Welcome to Previously on X-Men.
The podcast that looks back on X-Men comics, movies, shows, characters, and more. One of us is super excited, the other one a little less so.
No, welcome. I'm excited for the listener.
Yeah, you have to be excited for the podcast, so others will be excited.
You're right.
And if you're not excited enough yet, you can find more about this show and others like it at our network's website, radiomeanwhile.com. And you can share your thoughts on this and upcoming episodes by following us on Facebook and Twitter at Previously on X, where you can rate, subscribe, and share the show on iTunes, Spotify, Google, wherever you get your podcast. I'm Eric Mickles, known online as Dust vs. Tweak, and with me is my co-host,
Hilary Gunning.
And today we're talking about Halt, mutant identified, gunning, Hilary, mutant power, coffee related, apprehend, destroy, destroy.
We're talking about the Sentinels.
Today we're spotlighting Sentinels. Did you like how I gave you coffee-related powers?
I did. I
didn't know in what
now,
way.
Is it when I consume them I get the powers? Or like I
out.
give people coffee as my power?
I guess it's kind of up to you at this point.
I'm not giving people coffee is all I'm saying.
I think the way powers get stronger and stronger as the series goes on, maybe you'd start where you have to get coffee, and then later you can maybe create it and maybe even control it.
I can control coffee.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Cream! You'd be like Storm. Sugar!
And in the end, I just have the perfect coffee. Not.
Do the Sentinels scare you, Hilary?
Do they scare me?
Yeah, like when the Sentinels show up, you're like, oh no, the Sentinels. You know how you're kind of afraid of Sabretooth?
What? I'm not afraid of Sabretooth.
Yeah, that's why you don't like him, because he kind of scares you.
Yes, he scares me.
No, but Sentinels don't scare you.
It's trying to come up with a joke about his masculinity.
Oh,
being
his toxic masculinity scares you.
There you go, toxic masculinity.
Yeah. All his white privilege scares you.
Anyway, no, I don't find them threatening at all.
At all?
I don't know if no, I really, really don't. I don't know if it's because my first experience is with that, like, kind of bubbly, cartoony thing in the animated series, but yeah, I have never found them threatening.
I'm pretty sure if listeners go back to our animated series, you would not call the Sentinel episodes bubbly.
No, the episodes aren't bubbly. I mean the design.
Oh, you mean the big purple... Listen,
yeah.
I love me my big purple Sentinels.
I know. I don't dislike them. I'm just saying, for some reason, I don't find them threatening, and I think that's why. Mm-hmm. And like later when you have them in the movies and stuff, they're portrayed as more threatening, but somehow knowing that they're Sentinels makes my like visceral reaction to them just be less like threatened.
Right.
I
don't know. Yeah, because they're constantly falling over and getting beat up.
I guess so. Yeah. Like they're so big, but they're just like,
oh no, I've tripped over a jump rope.
Yes. And like it seems like they would be scary because they're very like menacing and like they like zoom in on like a specific person and they're like, we're robots and we're going after you.
Right.
That seems threatening, but yeah, I don't know.
Well, let's talk about all the different marks of Sentinels, the models.
Let's do it!
Well, the Sentinels first appeared, Hilary, in X-Men number 14 in November 1965, and they were created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. And it's kind of funny, like, looking back at the older stuff, because I never get a sense of, like, how tall they're supposed to be, because, like, I'm used to them being, you know, a couple stories tall. But when you first see them, they're like just a little taller than the average person. Huh. They're big enough to just like pick up Professor X with like their bare hands. I don't know. They get bigger, I think, as they go out. But these days they get smaller because cool tech is small.
Cool tech is small.
But now also iPhones are getting bigger, so maybe it's coming back around. We want our Sentinels
They'll
bigger
be giant
too.
Again. Yeah.
So the Mark I Sentinels, Hilary. Mark I. Were created by Bolivar Trask. You remember Bolivar Trask from
I do.
Stuff. He shows up. Yeah, the animated series. He made it into the movie. He also created Master Mold, our favorite.
Master Mold, not Mother Mold.
Not Mother Mold, Master Mold. Mother Mold is coming later. So Bolivar Trask created Master Mold, and these are the Sentinels that want to conquer humans so that they can conquer mutants. That's how they become like a big threat.
Because mutants are humans.
Well, that's what the animated series says. I think the Mark I Sentinels in the comics were just like, if we conquer humans, it'll be easier to conquer mutants.
Okay.
Yeah, but this is also really like the first time the X-Men, and this is like when, for listeners who haven't done this, like people who only know the X-Men through this podcast, if those exist.
Wouldn't it be fun if that was a
Yeah,
thing?
they're like, tell me about, this is like the original
This is the oral
X-Men
history
team.
that we're passing down.
This is in the 60s, as I said, 1965. So this team is Cyclops, Jean, Beast, Angel, and Iceman. Like, this is where they're supposed to be teenagers. And they're...
But like 60s teenagers.
Yeah, 60s teenagers. So they're always
so
wearing...
basically 30-year-old businessmen.
Yeah. They've never dressed like kids in their lives. This is the first time, really, that they're threatened because of their mutantdom. Like, they fought mutant threats. They've dealt with Magneto, they've dealt with the Vanisher and the Blob and Juggernaut, and, you know, have dealt with the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. But this is where, like, the idea that mutants are feared and hated because they're different really starts to come in. And so, like, that is very important. And it's not too surprising that it's the Sentinels that bring it in, because that's the way the animated series did it. It was the Sentinels first and then Magneto.
Yeah, well, I think it might be to do with that, what I mentioned about them, like, focusing, just something about a robot that's programmed to look for a specific person.
Yeah.
Seems like it's like a nice way to get that idea in there.
Yeah, it just really, I don't know, it just hammers home how much humans fear that they need to make this weapon to tackle that. And it's just, you know, this unfeeling weapon, and that it's, like you said, focusing, but it's just focusing on them just because of a mutant.
It's just I see a mutant.
Right. It doesn't say, like, bad mutant, good mutant. It's just mutant. And
that's really interesting that that theme came so far. I mean, it's early, but it's several issues in.
Yeah, 14
I
issues.
think that's really interesting for that to be, I mean, I would consider that to be the theme of the X-Men.
Yeah, well, I feel like the X-Men kind of feel a little unfocused for a long time because Stan Lee's just kind of writing them as superheroes a bit, and, you know, being a mutant is just kind of like, oh, it's the way I don't have to come up with new reasons for powers anymore. And the whole, like, feared and hated thing, I think, comes a little bit later. Well, I mean, it does with this issue 14, but I don't know if that was always Stan Lee's and Jack Kirby's, like, original intent with that.
But they always I feel like they always talk about it as if that's why they made the X-Men.
Yeah. So,
I mean, I could see a little bit. I mean, this is wild speculation, but I could see a little bit. I mean, either they just, like, were playing with the idea and then came up with this, like, that'd be cool to have them be different and that people are scared of them. That's possible. It's also possible that they were trying to just, like, get the fun stuff in there before they started all of the philosophy.
Sure, yeah,
just
get the kids in first.
Appeal, yeah.
So the Mark I Sentinels that Bolivar Trask created, they wanted to conquer humans to conquer mutants. Bolivar Trask is appalled by this.
Appalled.
He's appalled that they're going to control humanity, so he sacrifices.
Is beside himself.
The same thing happened in Night of the Sentinels. Not Night of the Sentinels, The Final Decision, the last episode of season 1 of the animated series, where he's like, you have to help humans by capturing mutants. He's like, mutants are humans. And Bolivar Trask is like, what? You almost feel like the camera was, like, doing a circle around his head, like, what? But yes, he is appalled that these Sentinels are going to conquer humans as well as mutants. So he sacrifices his own life in order to destroy Master Mold and the Sentinels.
So in some ways, he's noble?
I don't know. Again, I've been...
A noble bigot?
The same way, yeah. He did create the Sentinels, and now they're going to be a problem forever. I don't know. So the Sentinels don't show up again for a while. They had, like... it was like issues 14, 15, and 16, I think. It was like a 3-parter. But then they don't show up for a while until X-Men 57.
Oh, wow.
That seems like a long... Like, you were talking about, like, you know, it seemed like that was always the idea, and the Sentinels are really becoming the allegory for fear and hated. But then to not use them again for, like, 40 issues, it's kind of surprising. But I just feel like, again... People just didn't know what to do with the X-Men at that time. Like, oh, are they just superheroes that are also mutants? Is this mutant thing important? Are they teenagers? Should they graduate to school? It just feels like a bit unfocused. And I think maybe the stuff that Roy Thomas and Neil Adams does really gave it a focus. And they're also the ones that brought the Sentinels back in 57. They bring in the Mark II Sentinels. Mark II! And these Sentinels are created by Larry Trask, who is the son of Bolivar Trask. Yeah.
Larry Trask?
Yeah, Bolivar Trask and his son Larry.
Larry!
I just want to help, Dad! Oh, Larry. So Larry Trask, who you're laughing at, he's just
Larry Trask.
Yeah, excuse him for being born, Hilary. So
he didn't choose his name. Why doesn't he go by Lawrence? Huh?
Lawrence Trask?
Huh?
That is a little, yeah. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's just straight up Larry. Maybe his
Larry.
birth certificate just says Larry Trask. Apologies.
That's a thing that they do sometimes. Like people will give their kid a nickname as their name.
Apologies to all Larrys out there. During this adventure, Larry Trask is revealed to be a precog mutant.
Ooh.
And so when the Sentinels discover this, they turn on him. Apparently, Bolivar Trask knew this and had like a medallion on him that kept his mutant powers at bay. And
hang on.
Yeah.
Hang on. So he has a medallion that keeps mutant powers at bay, but he instead chooses to build monstrous robots to hunt them down and kill them.
Larry Trask didn't know this because of the medallion.
I'm just saying. Bolivar.
Yeah, no. But the Bolivar Trask stuff is retconned, so it's not like Stan Lee's writing this stuff and then making the Sentinels.
I'm just saying.
Yeah, no, it's
if you have the medallion, maybe go that route.
We've made medallions for everybody. If you want them, they're here. But yeah, when the Sentinels realize that Larry Trask is a precog and a mutant, they turn on him. So these are the Sentinels that Cyclops convinces that in order to destroy mutant kind, they must destroy the source of mutation, the sun.
Wait, the Sentinels?
The Sentinels must destroy the sun.
Which is the source of mutation.
So these 60s robots with their 60s robot brains fly into the sun.
They just fly into the sun.
They fly up to the sun to destroy the sun because Cyclops is like, well, the sun gives us our powers and yeah.
Wow.
So okay. Like, that is logical. Thank you for helping us. Let's blow up the sun, baby.
With our bodies.
So it's but guess what, Hilary? Sentinels not so 60s stupid.
Really?
The Mark II Sentinels and Larry Trask later reappear in Avengers 103 and 104, which was also written by Roy Thomas. Here, we learn not all the Sentinels were destroyed. One Sentinel, called Number 2, realized they couldn't destroy the sun. So instead, they'll create a device that can cause a solar flare to destroy the Earth.
Oh my gosh.
This story has a lot with like Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver because they're on the Avengers at this point and they're both mutants.
You know what I'm seeing the problem is
at
here?
This time.
This is some careless programming. Somebody's not doing their if-thens quite as carefully as they might.
Well, it's just so funny because this is like, if you think about it like the 60s, robots and AI, it's just as sci-fi as can be back then, you know? Like, and so you just have no real frame of reference to be like, what will robots think and stuff? And now we're like, AIs are composing music and they're having conversations with Billie Eilish. So now it just seems so ridiculous. But even then, it's just so far future. It's just so funny. But yeah, they're gonna blow up the Earth. So Larry Trask is there to help, and he has a mutant detecting device that makes all mutants glow, including, get this, Number 2, the Sentinel, who had decided to destroy Earth. It turned out that the sun's radiation mutated Number 2.
What?
And that's how he figured it out. That's why he was like, wait a second. It was.
So hang on. What are the Sentinels looking for when they're looking for mutants?
Just mutants.
Like they're just looking for radiation, I guess?
Well, that tracks, right? Because Cyclops is saying solar radiation is and I mean, that's the thing too in the 60s. I think it's Beast's origin is that his parents were both working with radiation and that's how he was born. So it's a little less that as you go forward. It's just the genome.
I guess it seems to me like organic material would be necessary in any diagnostic that they're doing.
The big ol' Sentinel Number 2 was mutated by the sun's radiation. So all the other Sentinels blow up Number 2 because they realize he's a mutant. But doing that causes them all to deactivate.
Because he was in charge?
He was in charge. One of the Sentinels falls on Larry Trask and kills him.
Oh, Larry. Yeah.
To have one just fall on you and kill you.
Crushing is not fun.
No.
I always hate that. I think that might be, in all of violent anything, I think crushing is my least favorite.
But this is, if you're just reading like these 60s stories, I get where you're coming from, Hilary. Because like, Oh, wait, we need to capture humans now, too. Oh, we'll go blow up the sun. Wait a second, I'm a mutant. It's just,
Yeah.
they're kind of silly stories. They've got the whole fear and hated, but the Sentinels are still just kind of silly.
Bumbly.
Yeah, bumbly. All right, you want to talk about the Mark III Sentinels? Mark III. You won't believe what happens next with the Mark III Sentinels.
What color are they?
Purple. Yeah, all right, so
Are they always purple?
at this point, we're dealing with weren't they a little yellow when they were first made?
Boy, I don't know.
I want to throw in, there's a 60s story, Alex Ross, him and Kurt Busiek did a series called Marvels about Ben Ehrlich going around and, like, as superheroes were showing up in the Marvel Universe. And he does an early story. And the way Alex Ross draws, because he has that painting style, the way Alex Ross shows the Sentinels, they're pretty creepy because they're just like these towering figures and you get their eyes just glowing in the night and everything. It's scary. The Mark III Sentinels appear in X-Men 98 by Chris Claremont and Dave Cockrum. So this is the first time the Sentinels show up for the all new, all different X-Men, our Storm, Colossus, Wolverine. These were created by Stephen Lang. This program, the Mark III Sentinels, was a government-sanctioned program that were using all the parts and plans that the Trask had done, except Stephen Lang secretly hated mutants.
What?
The government just wanted to, work on Sentinel programming and see what Trask, both Bolivar and Larry had done. Stephen Lang.
So the government wasn't thinking about mutants specifically?
Right. They weren't.
Is that what you're saying?
Didn't want to make the Sentinels just to straight up kill mutants, but Stephen Lang did. So you can see how that would go. Lang wants to kill the X-Men because then it will be easier to kill all other mutants if he gets the superhero mutants out of the way.
It's a good plan.
So he has a space station where he captures some of the X-Men. He also builds the X-Sentinels. X-Sentinels! These are the Sentinels that look like the original X-Men.
Ah, yeah.
But then the all-new, all-different X-Men beat them up. And those are destroyed. Lang's space station is destroyed. And the Sentinels are destroyed. And Lang is destroyed.
Crushed?
No. He's in a...
Is he hoisted on his own petard?
A little bit. He's in a shuttle, and he's trying to shoot Cyclops, and Jean causes a malfunction, and he crashes and blows up. But not
Murdered
really.
by Jean.
Not really, Hilary, because more in a sec.
Okay.
These Sentinels, the Mark III Sentinels, were made to be less independent than previous versions to stop the whole conquering humanity and flying into the sun problems.
If you determine that the Earth needs to be destroyed, don't do that.
Affirmative.
That would be my first line of programming.
It just puts in there, do not kill humans.
Do
not fly into
don't
sun.
Destroy the planet. Just as a baseline.
So that was Stephen Lang's first thing. Like, let's stop with all the independent thinking robots. Mm-hmm. So Lang was destroyed, but not really, because it turned out Lang's mind was apparently saved before he died, and it was combined with Master Mold.
It was combined.
His mind was combined with Master Mold.
Just like incidentally?
No, the Sentinels did it.
The Sentinels did it, okay.
So this version shows up in Incredible Hulk Annual number 7 for some reason. The Hulk alongside Iceman and Angel destroy this version for now.
Interesting.
If I was Iceman and Angel, I'd be very happy that Hulk was there to help with this because I would be Iceman and Angel fighting Master Mold and the Sentinels. I'd be like, wait, this is bad for us.
Let's call the Hulk.
So the Sentinels would then feature in... Hilary, can you guess when they would feature next? It's a biggin'. It's the Days of Future Past!
I was gonna say Days of Future Past! I was gonna say it!
So technically, like, I've been going through their, like, chronology and order, but they don't actually show up in the present during Days of Future Past, but it feels like too important of a Sentinel story. Yeah. So I had read, gosh, what was it? It's a quote from Creators on X-Men, where Tom DeFalco interviews all the people who worked on them, that John Byrne wanted to do a story about Days of Future Past because Chris Claremont didn't think much of the Sentinels. John Byrne wanted to do a Sentinel story, and Chris Claremont's like, no, I don't want to do the Sentinels. They're wimpy. And John Byrne's like,
I'm with you.
John Byrne said, no, they're wimpy because you write them wimpy. Let's do this.
Ooh, snap.
Yeah, that's why they did the Days of Future Past, where the X-Men are straight up dead, and the ones that aren't dead get killed by the end of it in the future. I mean, that's the issue where Wolverine is just disintegrated to a skeleton. Storm gets a harpoon through her body, and Colossus is killed off screen. It's like, this is the Sentinels probably being their most dangerous ever. But again, it's them in the future.
Right.
So these future
probably Sentinels. if I'm thinking about my feelings about the Sentinels, probably Days of Future Past, they are creepier than standard.
I mean, they're supposed to be so much stronger, even though they look that much different. So they get, and because it's like an alternate future, you have the Sentinels, which is supposed to be the most dangerous threat, you know, the most dangerous human-related threat for mutants. But they can't kill off the cast members on a regular basis. So when you're doing this future story and you're killing, you know, Wolverine and Storm and stuff, suddenly they look more threatening. And I think that's just kind of a problem you have with characters like Sentinels. You have to introduce all these like nobody mutants for them to like squish or blow up and stuff. Like, boy, I just got my power, I look like a dog, and then a Sentinel comes down and disintegrate you, and you're like, okay, well, the Sentinels can beat the guy that looks like a dog, but they can't beat Nightcrawler or Iceman.
Well, I think another problem is that they tend to be used as like, yes, exactly. It's just
especially
like things
in the
that
cartoon
can be destroyed without there really being any repercussions.
Yeah, I mean, in the cartoon, you can have Wolverine's claws are basically useless in the cartoon, but throw a Sentinel at him, he can just cut them up.
Yeah.
And I think that's, it's one of those things where like it benefits you because you can destroy them and really like get brutal, but also they just become non-threatening. And that happens with like anything like that. You start to be like, oh, don't worry, it's just these guys. I think even Wolverine comments on them later during the right when Grant Morrison takes over. They're fighting like a big Sentinel. Even Wolverine's like, boy, they're getting slow, aren't they? It's just kind of like after a while they're not a problem. Because of the assassination of Senator Kelly, Sentinels are reactivated and nearly destroy all of mutant kind. But thanks to a time-traveling Kitty Pryde in the comics, Bishop in the cartoon, and Wolverine in the movies, the X-Men stop the assassination of Senator Kelly or Bolivar Trask. Thus, they prevent that future. Not really. You can't destroy anything in the Marvel Universe. The Sentinels in this future are supposed to be quite advanced, as we've talked about. So they're not... The ones that we see in these future scenes are supposed to be like Mark 8 or something.
Mark 8, I guess?
Way along there.
Yeah, way down the line. Because we're only dealing with Mark III Sentinels. These are pretty big Sentinels. These are the big Sentinels. They're the big purple Sentinels. These are the ones that I tend to think of when I think of Sentinels. One of my brothers had this cool Sentinel figure, and this was before I even knew what X-Men were, so I didn't even recognize what this was. But it was this, like, super tall Sentinel who had, like, a grappling hook that would shoot out, that its other arm could shoot out, so it would be a punching thing. Its back would open up so it could capture other action figures, and its boost had like thrusters on it. And I was just like, what is this? And now if I had it, I'm like, this is cool.
Sentinel.
Do you remember like do you remember the Marvel Legends action figures? Like they still have them out, but when they first introduced them, they were like really detailed and big and everything. There was that one where if you bought 7 of the figures, you could build like a 2-scale Sentinel.
Oh, yeah.
That was massive. If I need to get that. That's one, like, I don't have a Sentinel action figure, but I'd like one.
Yeah, that's the one.
All right, let's talk about the Mark IV, 5, and 6 Sentinels.
Mark 4, 5, and 6!
They kind of get, it's kind of just like one leads into the other, but it's not like a big change like the others. The first time they appear is in Uncanny X-Men 151. Now they're getting created by Sebastian Shaw. Half these Sentinels, Hilary, that we've talked about have been made by mutants. You got Larry Trask and now Sebastian Shaw making these.
Well, that seems flawed.
Yeah, the government is the one that's like funding, they want Shaw Industries, and they want Sebastian Shaw to build the Sentinels. And I don't know why, I don't even know if it's ever really explained in the comics why Shaw is making them in the first place. I mean,
he's a bad guy.
But he's a mutant, and he still wants like mutants to be in charge. If the Hellfire Club is all mutants, I don't really know what his
maybe
long game
he's
is.
Going to build them like they're going to destroy mutants, but actually they're going to destroy humans.
But they're always attacking mutants.
Well, I don't know.
I don't know if it's to like control the mutant population that won't listen to him or what? Anyway, in response to the attack on Senator Kelly's life, the government started Project Wide Awake, which was a secret program to track, research, and capture mutants illegally. So this isn't the same thing that Stephen Lang was working at. This is the government like doing it is secret, and most of the stuff they're doing is illegal. So it's a clandestine. No, not clandestine.
Clandestine.
Clandestine or clandestine?
I mean, that's just a pronounce.
Oh, okay.
Clandestine.
Well, it's clandestine project. So they hired Shaw and Shaw Industries to create the Sentinels for this purpose. So the Mark IV Sentinels were used on the X-Men when the White Queen switched bodies with Storm. They went down pretty easy. Nightcrawler, teleported a bunch of bombs on them at the same time, and they all fell into the water. The Mark V Sentinels, Hilary, were blue.
Interesting.
Yeah, they were used on the New Mutants. And they still don't even win. So, I mean, I guess if your new Sentinels can't stop the teenagers who don't really know how to use their powers, it's a good thing you got a Mark VI Sentinels coming down the track. So the Mark VI Sentinels were purple again. They figured, you know what? We tried it. It didn't work. It was the new Coke. We're bringing back
purple.
Yeah, just give me my purple Sentinels. Give me my 20-story tall purple Sentinels. I don't know if you've seen it, but the X-Men encyclopedia that DK put out, the Ultimate X-Men encyclopedia, they had a 2-page spread of Sentinels that you had to turn the book for so that they could show it half their purple casing and then half inside, and they would have all labels this is a thruster, this is for this is a gyro. I'm this is sweet.
You can build your own Sentinel.
Yeah. So far, the only set we've had Master Mold, and we've had number 2. Those Sentinels have had some personalities. And we've also had Stephen Lang inside the head of Master Mold. But now we've got Nimrod. Nimrod, who I've always felt looks stupid, but...
Yes, agreed.
Because he's got that big... I don't know what... It's such an 80s design, but it's almost like they gave him bell bottoms. He's just got this crazy look to him. Anyway, Nimrod shows up in Uncanny X-Men 191. So he's an advanced prototype Sentinel from the Days of Future Past timeline. And he's pulled into the past accidentally by Doctor Strange, who was trying to stop Kulan Goth's magical hold on New York. That was the whole thing at the time. Stephen Strange made it so Kulan Kong wouldn't be able to do that, and what happens is Nimrod's pulled into the past and he kills a guy that's going to do something that's going to cause it. Doctor Strange didn't know how he was changing things. He was just doing irresponsible Doctor Strange.
Irresponsible. You gotta think through your consequences.
So Nimrod is a self-repairing robot and can improve his systems to be a tougher foe. So he's bad mojo. So Nimrod, it's also, I mean, I get what a Nimrod is, but it's also
Nimrod is a terrible name.
A terrible name. Because, was this not a thing when Chris Claremont's writing this in the 80s? We know what a Nimrod is.
At least in the 90s.
Yeah.
At least in the 90s, Nimrod was an insult.
Yeah. But in the 80s, it is not, I guess? It just...
I don't know.
Oh, look, Nimrod's here.
Well, great.
Why do you keep
Nimrod.
calling me that? Destroy!
Nimrod.
No,
He came back from the Days of Future Past thing in the cartoon, too.
Yeah, he did. It was in the Days of Future Past one. He was chasing Bishop. He left so that the other Sentinels would stop calling him Nimrod.
Nimrod.
Why do you... I'm the advanced Sentinel. Then why does one have bell-bottom pants?
Why do other Sentinels... Anyway, Nimrod decides that he won't destroy all the mutants. He's just going to destroy the outlaws.
He decides. So he's
Yeah, he's that advanced.
autonomous.
Yeah, but he's decided in this time where he is now, he doesn't need to kill all the mutants. He's just gonna kill the outlaw mutants, which means the X-Men.
Very gracious of him.
Yeah, sure. Don't worry, one that looks like dog. You're safe. I don't know why I'm making him turn into Tarzan.
Don't commit crime.
Yeah. So New York starts to see Nimrod as a vigilante. I should say he also can look human.
Hang on. So he has a character arc?
He sure does.
Oh boy.
He can look like humans, and so people think he's just this violent vigilante who's killing outlaw mutants. So New York's yeah, Nimrod, whoever he is, we love him. And so he's worth applauding, and he has to start having a double life as a human construction worker. I just did you watched WandaVision, right?
I did.
And how Vision's always oh, I don't eat. I don't eat when I'm out. I feel like Nimrod's going to be the same thing. Oh, I don't eat human food. I mean, food.
Food for me as well as
we
you.
are all humans together. During his whole time as just working as a construction worker, Master Mold / Stephen Lang comes back. So in Marvel Comics Presents number 17 through 24, He creates a virus to wipe out all mutants. The Retribution
Stephen Lang?
Yeah, Stephen Lang Master Mold.
Okay.
He creates a virus to wipe out mutants. It's called the Retribution virus. It is not the Legacy virus.
It is the Retribution
virus made by Master
Retribution
Mold's,
for what?
his death by Gene Scott.
All right.
Because now he's stuck as a robot. You just think that and like, okay, well, after you do this, you're still just going to be a robot. What are you going to do, Stephen Lang? Why don't you build yourself a human body?
He'll just start a new life as a construction worker.
Yeah, you can do that. It's easy. Mm-hmm. Cyclops destroys him, though Banshee says that he finished the job. Cyclops blows him up, but then Banshee comes in and like blows him up with his powers, and Banshee's like, "Oh, I finished him off for you, Cyclops." And Cyclops is like, "Oh no. You're Banshee and I'm Cyclops." Nimrod finds pieces of Master Mold, and it could be the pieces that Master Mold / Stephen Lang were that Cyclops destroyed, or it might be the Master Mold that Power Pack defeated.
There were 2.
Yeah, there was another. Master Molds are just popping up all over the place. Anyway, Power Pack, they're a bunch of kids. They're a bunch of, like, and I don't mean teenagers, I mean children. Like,
children.
They need adult supervision children, but
Are they mutants?
One of them is. I don't know about the Power Pack. They're just kids. They beat Master Mold. So at this point, what threat is Master Mold if Power Pack is beating them?
Power Pack beat him.
Anyways, Nimrod finds remains of the day. He finds remains of Master Mold, and the Master Mold starts co-oping and absorbing Nimrod, and now Nimrod is back to his direct. He's no longer his autonomous self. He's like, I'm living a happy life.
So like Master Mold reprograms him.
Yeah, to go back to being a Sentinel that kills all mutants and everything. But he's like, what about my other life? He was living...
My children!
Yeah, he was living with other people. He's like, but I've made friends at the construction site. We just got a new job. They need me.
No.
What about the
Teamsters? You're not a man. You're a machine.
I am a man! The X-Men, they get into a battle with this new entity. This Nimrod Master Mold. And do you remember me talking about... I think I talked about it with the Rogue storyline. How they have a thing called the Siege Paralysis, where if they go through, they'll die, but then they'll like come out and they'll just be different. And that's where we lost Rogue for a little bit. They're going to use the Siege Paralysis to get rid of this Sentinel. And Rogue is pushing him through, but he's huge and he's grabbing, he's resisting. He has Rogue, and now Rogue can't get out, and he can't go through. They're in this stalemate, and so Dazzler blasts them through. But also, Nimrod's consciousness comes back. Nimrod points out that they become a new being, thus they've mutated, which causes Master Mold to explode.
Does not compute.
He basically just says, Master Mold is like, that's right, I am a mutant. And Nimrod says, like, then do your job. And so he self-destructs.
It's way harsh.
Yeah, but Rogue and the remains of Master Mold / Nimrod go through the Siege Paralysis together. So the Sentinels, Hilary, they also make a big impact in Uncanny X-Men 281 and 282 because they kill the Reavers, the Hellions, and seemingly the White Queen and Jean Grey. But White Queen and Jean are fine. The Reavers were those, like, the robots, the cyborg people that really, like, messed up. They were a big threat for the X-Men for a bit, but they really messed up Wolverine. But the Sentinels just came in and wiped the floor with them. Only Lady Deathstrike got away, I think. The Hellions are Emma Frost's students at her other school. And they were like, New Mutants characters and everything. But this is around the time when Chris Claremont was leaving the X-Men. And so they had done the 2 different titles. So they're bringing in all these new creators. And it's kind of like they just wanted to sweep past stories. And they're like, get rid of the Reavers, get rid of the Hellions, get rid of the White Queen. We're going to blow up some Sentinels. Everybody's gone. It's a new day. These Sentinels were under the control of Trevor Fitzroy. He's the guy with
Fitzroy.
He's the guy with green hair. I don't think he showed up in the animated series yet. He comes.
I don't think I know this guy.
He's going to show up in the 2-parter One Man's Worth, where Professor X gets killed in the past. We just got to wait for the guy with green hair, who's kind of annoying.
Green hair guy.
Yeah. The Sentinels, I don't know, they stopped being, for a good amount of time, from like the early 90s until like late, for years, they kind of just don't become a threat. Like in Age of Apocalypse, they're just used by other people. Onslaught uses the Sentinels to take over Manhattan, but the Sentinels aren't just doing stuff. He's just having them around. So they kind of like fall back for a little bit because of Onslaught's attack. Onslaught being the psychic entity that is Xavier and Magneto's dark sides combined. His attack and and the disappearance of the Marvel superheroes that went along with his attack. Also, at the same time, the assassination of presidential candidate Graydon Creed, who is Mystique and Sabretooth's son. The figure known as Bastion is able to get approval for Operation Zero Tolerance, which leads to the creation of the Prime Sentinels.
Prime Sentinels!
These, I thought were so cool of an idea when I was a kid, the Prime Sentinels. They're humans with nanotechs in them that would transform them into human Sentinel hybrids.
Wow.
But a lot of them, Prime Sentinels, were able to act as sleeper agents, and a lot of people didn't know they were Prime Sentinels until they were activated. So they're kind of like the Cylons from the reboot.
Oh, yeah.
I thought it was such a cool idea. Karima Shapenda, aka Omega Sentinel, is a Prime Sentinel. But she's usually on the side of angels. Right now, she's working with Orcus. But yeah, I just thought the idea of Prime Sentinels was such a cool new take on the set. But Bastion and his Prime Sentinels are able to capture the X-Men and steal tech from Xavier's school. Bastion also I always thought was cool. He has this cool look. He's in purple, kind of the Sentinels color. He's got that white goatee. He looks like a dangerous fellow. When Bastion's defeated by Iceman, he's arrested by S.H.I.E.L.D., and he later breaks out, escapes to his old base, where he learns, the reader learns, that Bastion is actually an advanced Sentinel himself.
What?
Guess what? When Nimrod and Master Mold went through the siege paralysis, they transformed into Bastion. Shut up.
Oh my gosh.
Bastion was Nimrod and Master Mold.
What?
They're together. When I found that out, I thought that was dope. That's the only word I can think of. I was like, dope! And if something's cool enough to be dope, then you know it's cool.
That's out there.
Yeah.
That's out there cool.
Yeah, after I found that out, I went over and started playing Tony Hawk Pro Skater with my friends. Yo, you hear about Bastion?
Get this dope energy out.
Let's put on some beanies!
Woo!
You played X-Men Next Dimension, the fighting game, right?
Yes.
The side-scrolling fighting game.
I'm familiar, but I don't have a lot of...
I think that would be the only thing, because he's not in the cartoons, but he is a character you can play, and he's the main villain of that.
Oh, okay,
so, that's it. And actually, that was some of my early experiences with him, too. They just made him the villain. If you beat the game, you could play as him and 2 other Sentinels. Cassandra Nova. Okay, so we're in the Grant Morrison era now. So this is 2001? Yeah. Cassandra Nova uses Bolivar Trask's nephew, Donald Trask III. She uses him.
Okay, hang on. So we have Bolivar.
Trask.
Then we have
Larry.
And Donald.
Donald Trask III.
Larry and Donald.
Donald Trask III. There have been 2 other Donald Trask
all
before
I'm
this.
saying is that these are nerdy names.
Cassandra Nova needs Donald Trask III's DNA. He needs him to activate the Wild Sentinels. Wild Sentinels! There's a master mold that's in Ecuador. It's secretly building things in Ecuador. And they're using whatever they can find to build Sentinels. So sometimes it's weapons, sometimes it's vehicles, it's just tools. They can look like anything because whatever they have on hand, they're using to build Sentinels. So
like Transformers.
Yeah, a little like Transformers.
I'm just saying.
So some of them...
my brother-in-law grew up in Ecuador, and he never saw anything like this.
They wouldn't be secret if they were well-known.
Okay.
But yeah, so some of them look like bugs. They have a bunch of wildlife appearances. Cassandra Nova uses these Sentinels to destroy Genosha, killing 16 million mutants.
Millions?
Yes. So
Holy
yeah, I know
crap.
you haven't read Grant Morrison's run. This is the first story that she does. They just show up and start killing everything, and there's this ginormous Sentinel, this enormous Sentinel that flies into this building, and Magneto's there, and it just destroys it, and Genosha's just wiped from the map. This is a big deal at the time.
Wow.
Yeah. So the Mark 7 Sentinels.
Mark 7 Sentinels.
They're not robots. They're mech suits that have to be piloted. The organization is called 1O asterisk N asterisk E asterisk. These are the Sentinels that are used to guard the X Mansion after M-Day, the mutant decimation, No More Mutants. After Scarlet Witch did the No More Mutants stuff, and there's only 198 mutants left, these Sentinels are brought into the mansion, and they're basically treating the mansion and those grounds as like a reservation. Like, we'll protect the mutants that are here because there's only 198 of them left. They're piloted by people, which does the people piloting the Sentinels no favors during the Messiah Complex storyline, because Bishop, who has turned against the X-Men because he needs to kill the Messiah Complex baby because he says it's the thing that causes the Days of Future, a bunch of problems in his future. He's gonna chase him. So now he's after Cable, who has Hope, the baby Hope. So he sets off some nano Sentinels inside the One Armor, which kills all the pilots and causes those Sentinels to attack the X-Men.
Wow.
Yeah, it's not, you just see like the pilots just like, so what are we gonna do after this? I don't know, we can go get some chicken wings. And then like, it just starts blowing up. They're like, oh God, we're dying! Let us out, we're dying! It's just,
yikes.
It's brutal.
That reminds me, this is just a tangent, but my husband is playing Star Wars something. It's some new Star Wars
Fallen
game,
Order.
Newish. Fallen Order.
Uh-huh.
And the thing that I noticed while I'm watching it is that they have really funny crosstalk from the
Stormtroopers.
Mm-hmm. And I both like and don't like it because like it's really funny, but it's also like, oh, now Stan is dead. That's too bad.
Yeah.
I was just getting to know him.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna visit my Nana later. She's been in that home. I know she's getting lonely, so I'm gonna bring her. I'm gonna bring her some pasta. She loves it.
You know what? I think I'm done with this. I think I've taken the whole Stormtrooper thing as far as it can take me.
You put in your 4 years, man. Oh Lord, it's a Jedi!
Guess who shows up later? It's Bastion. Bastion returns. He's trying to kill Hope. So this is during Second Coming.
So everyone's trying to kill Hope.
Everybody's trying to kill Hope, but this is the first time. This is when she's like back during the present, so she's older, and Cable's there, and Bastion and other Sentinels are trying to kill Hope, and he's seemingly destroyed when Hope uses her powers to use multiple X-Men powers.
All right.
So maybe Bastion is dead forever.
I'm taking from your tone.
He's not.
That perhaps that's not true.
So Tony Stark, of all people, created a series of Sentinels made out of adamantium.
Stark Sentinels.
Oh, great.
Thanks, Tony.
Thanks a lot,
Yeah,
Tony.
you know what? Stark sure looks like it could turn into Trask. Actually,
Yeah.
can it? Does it just do that? Does it?
Is that... Yeah.
Oh my gosh!
Stark.
Trask
Oh
is just an
my
anagram
gosh.
of Stark!
Ah!
Ah, boy. That's a thing. Anyway, he created a whole bunch of Sentinels out of adamantium, living up to his anagram.
Unbelievable.
But Red Skull, who becomes, Red Skull, who has Xavier's brain and becomes Red Onslaught, takes control of those Sentinels. This was during the Axis storyline. It's exhausting sometimes. We got another Sentinel on the scene, another like Sentinel personality, not Bastion,
Yet another.
not Master Mold, not number two,
Nimrod.
not Nimrod. It is his name is Alpha. So
Alpha.
He was introduced in X-Men Gold number 4, and so Alpha is a nanite swarm.
Alpha, the nanite swarm Sentinel. It's a Sentinel made of nanites. It's a big nanite storm cloud Sentinel, but it goes by the name Alpha.
They're a nanite swarm with Sentinel AI, and they can take the form of a body, which is the body of Alpha when he's there. But Alpha can split apart, he can form drones, it can just be a major pain for the X-Men. During this time, as well, Bastion is back. He's not going anywhere. Now this is some funny 60s robot logic that was happening like only a few years ago, Hilary. Bastion is having a weird programming moment where he decides that mutants are close to extinction because of M-Day and the Inhumans Terrigenis cloud. The cloud that's going around and turning everybody into Inhumans, but turns out it's deadly for X-Men, for mutants. So he's thinking they're close to extinction. So he figures his purpose now is to kill mutants, but if they all die, he'll have no purpose. So he's going to protect them. He's going to protect the mutants with Sentinels to help rebuild the mutant population so he can kill them.
So he can kill them again. Okay, sure.
I know it's stupid robot logic from the 60s, but I also liked it because I just thought it was like so funny that Bash is like, I don't know.
What am I going to do then?
Yeah. Just gonna become a
retire
Roomba?
to the mountains?
Yeah.
Whatever.
And we don't normally talk, Hilary, about the post House of X, Powers of X stuff, because all this like Dawn of X stuff is still like forming. It should be mentioned that in that story, in the House of X, Powers of X, that story has kind of reaffirmed that machines are the big problem for mutants, for the X-Men in general, and that a lot of the timelines we see, the machines are going to wipe them out. This is also where we get the concept of Mother Mold.
Mother Mold!
Mother Mold finally shows up, and I don't know why. I don't think you've read this at all.
I don't know. It's just floating around in my head. Has been for...
The energy of these stories has been strong enough that you just know about Mother Mold.
I guess.
Mother Mold is the Sentinel that can create Master Molds, who then create Sentinels.
Okay.
So if you see a Mother Mold on the scene, get rid of it. That's bad news.
Get rid of that Mother Mold. That's like a pest creator.
Yeah. You know what? I just read this story. It was 2003. It's taken me forever. I don't know if you've read this. It's called It was part of like the Marvel Digest, the same as like, the Spider-Man Loves Mary Jane, or Mary Jane Loves Spider-Man. The Runaways were this. Even the Mystique.
Yep, I had a bunch of those.
Yeah. Sentinel was 12 issues. It was about a boy finding a Sentinel rebuilding itself in his barn. And so
see, that's Transformers all the way.
It's Iron Giant in a big way too. But the thing is, like, Iron Giant, you're like, oh, this Iron Giant has like sentience and likes to have fun and do, but this is just a mutant killing machine. And so like the whole storyline, as the Sentinel's repairing itself, it constantly like main operation at 85%. Like it's slowly getting back to the point where he's gonna remember that it needs to kill mutants. But yeah.
I started this series.
Did you? Okay.
Just like a few pages, but I hated it.
It's not great. It's very wordy for something that's geared towards like kids, I felt like. I love the art. The art's by Udon, who also did the Street Fighter comics, and I think the art's great. The writing just takes a long time to get anywhere. During the story, it seems like it's gonna do this kind of dark metaphor on like kids bringing gun to schools, because at one point he's just done with bullies, and he goes to the Sentinel and he has a picture of the bullies that have been tormenting him. He's like, this is your prime target now. And that's how the issue ends. But then you read it and it turns out he uses the Sentinel to like attack the school, but nobody gets hurt. And then he attacks the Sentinel to make it look like he's the hero, and the Sentinel runs away, and then he's like, that was great. So now everybody thinks the kid's a hero. He has this Sentinel, and then later on, they brought the series back for 5 issues, and him and his Sentinel are still hanging out, and they fight another Sentinel. But it doesn't really go anywhere in the long run. Yeah. Just a boy and his robot story. But
boy and his robot.
Your house is the place I've seen these Marvel Digest the most in the same place. I've never seen so many of them like together.
We have them on a little shelf.
Yeah, it was that like Marvel Tsunami line where they were trying to go after like the manga readership. Yeah. Anyway, that's Sentinel history. Yeah. That's the Sentinel spotlight.
And you know what? We got through it.
The Sentinels, they're just like these big purple robots. But there's a lot of like individual Sentinels throughout.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't know that. Like when I was younger.
I didn't like really until like you start like thinking about them all. It's like, oh yeah, there's Nimrod, there's Master Mold, there's Number 2, there's now Alpha, there's Bastion, and you just start like listing them off. You're like, oh, they're not just like a whole bunch of Sentinels.
Oh, hey, I have a Sentinel tidbit. My husband and I are playing Ultimate Alliance 3 on the Switch. Mm-hmm. And one of the levels, you have to fight a Sentinel who gets an Infinity Stone.
Ooh, snap. I don't think that's happened in the comics. That'd be bad news.
He was intense.
Sentinels in video games, they've pretty much been there, it feels like. As long as there have been X-Men games, the Sentinels have shown up. Because, again, they're just cannon fodder. So I
just beat them up.
I know they're in there. You fight like a big one in one of the Sega games. In X-Men Legends 1, you just fought Sentinels nonstop. Mm-hmm. And it was fun because they were the big towering ones, and you would just teleport, and they would just crash. And then in that fighting game, even in the Marvel Capcom games, like Marvel vs. Capcom, you could play as a Sentinel every now and then. And it's so funny because they're just these big, bulky Sentinels, and they can't really jump, and their punches are slow, but they're also just fun to have in there because they're just big robots. Mm-hmm. They've been in every cartoon I could think of. Do you remember? So we've talked about them a lot in the 90s one. They don't show up for a little bit until in X-Men Evolution until later.
They're in there, but I think they're smaller and they're like the color is darker and stuff. Like everything has to be in that time period.
The mutants, like they capture them like in green balls, right? And like these like energy balls that capture them.
That sounds right. Yeah.
And I remember
I haven't watched that show since I was like a teenager.
I remember them in Wolverine and the X. Oh, they're in Wolverine and the X-Men because Professor X is trapped in the future, and he's trapped in the Days of Future Past future with Bishop and Marrow and all these other mutants, and so they're constantly running for. Oh my gosh, that's the thing.
Huh?
So in Wolverine and the X-Men, the animated series, I like broke down in tears because Marrow has a Sentinel in the future. She has a Sentinel that she calls Rover, and that's kind of a callback to a Grant Morrison storyline, Here Comes Tomorrow. She has a robot, she has a Sentinel that's programmed for her, and she calls it Rover, and they're like a team and everything. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna die talking about it. And the Sentinels attack and start fighting everybody, and they have to get out. And so Rover shows up and starts fighting the other Sentinels, and all he ever says is destroy. All he can say is destroy throughout the entire series. They're like, should we go over here? He's just like, destroy. It's kind of like the I Am Groot thing. It's like, it's destroy, but it means different things. And so he's fighting the Sentinels, and he's saying destroy, destroy, and he's fighting the other Sentinels, and the X-Men are getting out of there, and Marrow's like, no, Rover! And Rover turns to Marrow, and he says, run. And then
I remember that.
And then he gets destroyed. And I'm like, oh no.
Oh, Rover.
You turn a robot into a dog on me. It's just like, I can't. I'm getting choked up thinking about it. I remember watching that, and like he says that, and I just didn't expect it. So like all of a sudden I'm like coughing. I'm like, oh, what? Oh no. It's bad news. And in the movies, we talked about the Days of Future Past film, but a lot of the comments we got on the Sentinels were related to the film. And I know you're of a different mind on this, so I'll just read these comments.
Very well.
So, @Aaron Sinner said on Twitter, I'm still waiting for a film version that satisfies me. The movie Sentinels have always felt like generic hunter robots to date. Like the filmmakers are afraid of making them too cartoony, so they end up bland instead. @Marvel MMO said, the future Sentinels of the Days of Future Past film felt too alien, and he felt the past Sentinels felt too flimsy. What's scary about them in the comics is how something 3 stories tall always seems to get the drop on the heroes. And @DJ Presents, DJ said, I felt the same way about them in the movies as they did Transformers. Like, why are they so humanized in design, with eyeballs and spines? But they're supposed to be humanoid in the comics because Bolivar Trask is like making them for humans. I think you want them humanoid so humans would find them.
I think that's a big thing, robotics, from like early on, is that they have that feeling that they want to make new people almost, like they don't want something that doesn't look human. They want to make something that can be a new and kind of form of humanity. I think that's kind of a human hubris.
I think the thing is too that if you're going to have like 3-story tall Sentinels flying in the sky with big lights, like spotlights, you're going to want them to look human in nature. So the normal human would be like, well, okay, well, they look like me a little bit.
Yeah, sure.
As if they were like spider robots with wings that like screamed every time they fly. I don't think humans would get behind that. But you like the creepy designs from the movie.
I do, yeah. And I disagree. I think that they do have enough nods to the original design to be recognizable. I don't think that they look generic at all. I think that I can see, they're clearly going for something a little less cartoony. Mm-hmm. But like, as someone who's not emotionally connected to the design of the Sentinels, I guess it's easier for me to let that go. But I think they're recognizable as Sentinels.
I like the future Sentinels in all but design, I guess, because they also can like copy the powers of the mutants that they're fighting. So it's kind of like Nimrod in a way that they're improving. I like the 70s design they give to the Sentinels in that movie, but they're also like less threatening because they're so like early on. Like they're just robots with machine guns, so they're not much more than like, I don't know, independent tanks.
Yeah.
I don't know. They're just not as like threatening as I'd want them to be in the past, but I still like that kind of retro look to them. I like Aaron Sinner said, I'm still like hoping for something that looks like the traditional big old Sentinel. It's funny to me that you don't have an emotional attachment to like that design, considering how much you've seen not only Night of the Sentinels, but that first season.
Yeah, but I've just never liked it.
Really?
I've just never liked the Sentinels. Like, they just are always the most boring thing to me. I just would rather deal, I guess, with like the human interaction and the characters and stuff than just, giant robots.
I got into comics and X-Men right when Ultimate X-Men, the comic series, was starting by Mark Miller. And his first story, this first 6 issues, are very Sentinel heavy. It's all about the Sentinels and Magneto and everything. And like the Sentinels, it's kind of stupid and stuff, but like the Sentinels show up and they're like a big threat. They're like stepping on just random mutants and they're everywhere. It's like reading that as a teenager. It was definitely one of those like, wow, this is so dark, it's cool kind of thing. Like, I don't realize how dumb some of the things are, but it's pretty sweet where at the end of that storyline, they sent all the Sentinels to attack Magneto, and Magneto took over the Sentinels, and then he like flies to Washington on top of a Sentinel. So you just get this image of Magneto riding on top of a Sentinel in Ultimate X-Men that I always thought was like pretty sweet. And that felt kind of like what they were going for in the movie. So in general, like if a story is using the Sentinels, you're going to be less attached to that story than if it's just like the Brotherhood or Magneto or something.
I guess it just depends on how they use them. Like, if it's just like, if they're the main threat, then yeah, I'm not interested. I don't like mind them. Like, if they're a part of it, it's not going to put me off. But I just, if the point of the story is let's explore Sentinels, I don't care.
I love them. I don't know if that's come across, but I really like the Sentinels.
Yes.
I mean, they're the bad guy, so I don't like root for the Sentinels ever, but I do think they're like a great villain. I like that they've now, over the decades, taken off multiple forms, so you can have like the giant building size ones, or you can just have the Prime Sentinels that are people. I'm not sold on this whole new take with the nano Sentinel swarm. At that point, it's just like, well, surely the X-Men should be dead by now. If you have a nano swarm that could just fly into you and just like kill you from the inside out, how are the X-Men still walking? That's the Sentinels then. And
the Sentinels.
So our next episode, Hilary, is the New Mutants movie.
Cool. We've both already seen it. Are you going to watch it again?
Yeah, I got it on Blu-ray for Christmas, so I'm going to rewatch it because I didn't take notes when we watched it.
That's true.
And,
I
should have. Because I knew we were going to talk about it. I don't know, but I just wanted to. The first time I watched it, I just wanted to watch it.
Yeah, I felt the same way.
The New Mutants, because technically I feel like it fits right after Logan, both in terms of production and story. So we're going to be talking the New Mutants movie next. And then after that will be the animated series with the Time Fugitives.
Time Fugitives. The name Time Fugitives. I wonder if they initially called it Tempus Fugitives. Because Tempus Fugit is time flies in Latin, and so then it's like a pun.
Oh, I would not be surprised, for sure.
And then they were like, nobody knows what that means, so they just changed it to Time Fugitives.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they call one episode later Weapon X Lies and Videotapes, and most kids watching it aren't going to be familiar with sex, lies, and videotapes. So, anyway, I'm Eric Mickles. Dust vs. Tweak everywhere online, and I also co-host Comic Book Coffee Break, and 90s Music's Got Me Like.
Did you forget for a second?
I was like, is it previously on 90s Music? What am I doing? And Hilary is exclusively here until further notice.
Until further notice.
No, actually, I heard your voice was on 9021 Here We Go for the disclaimer.
Oh my gosh, yes.
That crazy episode.
Yes, the sensitive information disclaimer was my voice.
Yeah, Hilary goes in whenever 90210 decides it's going to tackle a very important issue poorly, Hilary has to come in and be like, things are going to get real here, warning.
Yeah.
Anyway, 90210 Here We Go is also a show on the Radio Meanwhile Network.
Yes.
Again, you can find more about this show notes like it at the network's website, radiomeanwhile.com. Please follow us on Facebook and Twitter at Previously on X. Please rate, subscribe, and share this show on Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Hilary unit identified. Hilary unit destroy.
Destroy.